Use your head, Electro. Each of us almost beat him alone. Working together, how can we fail? Quote, Kraven the Hunter. Amazing Spider-Man, Annual 1, Volume 1. In state prison, a special team has finally discovered a method to detach the 4 additional mechanical arms that became fused with Doctor Octopus after a freak accident. A police officer declares, now that we've taken your greatest power from you, you're just plain Dr. Otto Octavius, prisoner number 4756689. Unbeknownst to them, Dr. Octopus muses to himself. That's what he thinks. They don't suspect that I can control my arms mentally, even though they're now at a distance from me. An hour later, after Dr. Octopus returns to his cell, he realizes if my artificial arms are sent to another prison, they will be too far from my thought controls. That means I must get them back now and plan my escape right away while I still have the power. The evil arch-enemy villain sends a thought impulse from his brain, summoning his mighty mechanical arms. With unparalleled power, they obey his commands, seemingly unstoppable as they slowly travel along the walls and ceilings. Dr. Octopus, confident in his ability, declares, I knew I had the power to do it. Now his goal is to retach the mechanical arms to himself and break out of prison before the guards can muster enough reinforcements to stop him. At the Daily Bugle, Spider-Man picks up the latest copy to discover that Dr. Octopus has escaped. While Spider-Man is reading the newspaper, the mighty Thor whizzes by. Spider-Man wonders, where is he going? Having broken out of prison, Dr. Octopus gathers Mysterio, Electro, Kraven the Hunter, Vulture, and the Sandman to get revenge against Spider-Man as the Sinister Six. Peter's spider senses tingle in the presence of a mysterious man catching his attention. Flash, feeling jealous of Peter walking with Liz Allen, exacerbates the situation. Yesterday, Peter wanted to investigate the mysterious man, but the intention sparks a skirmish between Peter and Flash. Amidst the conflict, Dr. Strange passes as an ectoplasmic spirit. Eventually, Peter decides to change it to Spider-Man to get a better look at the mysterious man. Spider-Man attempts to jump on the mysterious figure, but the person suddenly disappears. If Spider-Man had managed to appear beneath the tiny cracks in the garment below, he would have seen one of the strangest criminals of all time. The criminal was reforming his body particles into a normal shape once more. It was the Sandman. The Sandman is on his way to an urgent meeting called by Doctor Octopus. Spider-Man descends into the tunnels but finds nothing prompting him to head home. When he arrives, he goes to see Aunt May. However, she is in the attic going through a picture of Uncle Ben. Turning away from the window with a heavy heart, Spider-Man walks aimlessly along the rooftops, lost in his own gloomy thoughts. Reflecting on himself, Spider-Man thinks, I can never forget that I'm partially to blame for Uncle Ben's death, and the fact that I'm the only one who knows it doesn't make it any easier to live with. Meanwhile, Spider-Man has once more found that his spider powers have faded, and he has to exercise more caution getting back home, lest someone take advantage of his lost powers to find out his secret identity. The Fantastic Four sees Spider-Man hanging from a pole, but insists he is a lone wolf and not to interfere. They observe that he doesn't need help. Spider-Man hanging there wonders why the Fantastic Four refuses to offer assistance. Meanwhile, at the hideout of Dr. Octopus, the guest list is completed with the arrival of the winged Vulture. Dr. Octopus says, now that we're all here, we'll get down to business immediately. The meeting will be a turning point of our careers. Electro says, skip the dramatic speeches, Octopus. Just state the plan. Sandman, whatever the plan is, Sandman is for it. I can't wait to pay Spider-Man back. The Kraven, we all have scores to settle with the elusive Spider-Man. And the Vulture adds, he defeated me twice, but this will be different. The third victory will be mine. We cannot beat with words. Let's band together and attack him now, says Mysterio. He's too fast. He'd find some way to escape us. Perhaps you're right, but there must be a way to force him to battle us. Of course there is. That's the purpose of this meeting. Now be quiet, all you. I've have it figured out. I say we must all attack at once. His power is not great enough to defeat all 6 of us. Bah, I'm wise to his tricks by now. I can lick him alone next time we meet. Kraven does not hunt in a pack, only by solo. Victory will I achieve, the revenge I seek. But he's beaten all of us in the past. Why take needless chances? I don't care how we do it. I'm just itching to tackle him. Now that you're all had to say here, I'll tell you my plan. I believe it will satisfy each of you. We will each draw a number and we'll fight him one at a time in the order of a drawing. I have worked out a detailed scheme which will force him to battle us. Now draw. Good action at last. On each of your cards I have written a location. It is the place where you will battle our common enemy, and each location is best suited for your particular talents. chance. I have left nothing to chance, as you shall see. Spider-Man will have no choice. He will have to fight each one after another, and each one of us will weaken him a little bit more, so his chances will grow slimmer after each battle. If I'm the first, there will be no further battles. Enough talk. Let's look at the cards. The next day, an unsuspecting Peter Parker lazily toys with his breakfast. Aunt May is very worried and offers Peter the option to stay home from school. However, Peter, with his head down, declines, saying, "No, I just need some exercise. I'm going for a walk." Aunt May thinks to himself, "The poor boy, he can't fool me. Something is bothering him. If only I could help him, but boys are so reluctant to confide in older people. If only they realize we understand more than they think." Worried about Peter, Aunt May goes to Betty Brant for help. Together they inquire with J. Jonah Jameson to see if he has seen Peter recently. Meanwhile, Flash Thompson teases Peter Parker for his absence at school, but other students recognize that it might be due to something important. Back at Peter's house, Aunt May concerns grows as she hears that Peter is not at school. So confused is Peter Parker and so heavy is his fit of depression that hangs over him that he has completely forgotten about everything except his own mystifying problems. Peter thinks to himself, "I've got to get used to normal everyday life again. I'll give up assignments as a part-time photographer for Mr. Jameson. I can't take the kind of crime pictures he wants without Spider-Man powers. Maybe I can even find the courage to tell Betty the truth about myself. After all, what harm can I do now?" As people are running away, Peter walks aimlessly. Peter sees that Giant Man and the Wasp have tracked a gang of criminals waiting for the police to come and round them up. Reflecting on the scene, Peter thinks to himself, "A few days ago, I was right in the center of things, but now I don't even want to be near any criminals." Aunt May goes to find Mrs. Brant. When Betty sees Aunt May, she offers to go for a cup of coffee with her. However, Electro and Sandman see Betty Brant and think to themselves they will also take both of them. The Sinister Six plans to capture Betty Brant to lure Spider-Man is working as planned. Unbeknownst to them, it's working even better than anticipated as they also capture Peter's aunt. "You mean you haven't heard of him? Don't let his looks deceive you, Mrs. Parker. Now, dear, we mustn't be prejudiced against the poor man just because he seems to have some trouble with his arms. Sit down, please. Make yourselves comfortable. I'll have my associates bring you some refreshments." Later, after a worried Peter Parker returns home and finds his aunt gone. "I got your call, Mr. Jameson. You said you think you saw my aunt get into a car with Betty Brant and Sandman and Electro? It doesn't sound possible." "Okay, big brain, so it's impossible. So you tell me where your aunt and my secretary disappeared to." Suddenly, a wicked-looking winged form appears outside the window. "I have a message for Spider-Man. The Sinister Six has captured Betty Brant. If he wants her, he'll have to come and get her." "The Sinister Six? But how the dickens am I supposed to tell Spider-Man?" "Put a notice in your paper. He's sure to read it. Tell him he must go to the Stark Electrical Building, Building 4. "All right, I'll do it. But take good care of Mrs. Brand. Good secretaries are hard to find nowadays." "But what can I do now? What good am I without my spider powers? How can I save her this time? Remember, see that Spider-Man gets our message or we'll hold you accountable. I'll print it in my paper like you asked, but I can't even swear that he knows how to read. My next edition won't be out for hours. Maybe I can notify Spider-Man faster by contacting some of the other costume clowns in the town. They'll probably all belong to the same club. Operator, get me Fantastic Four." "How should I know? Look in the phone book." "But if the Sinister Six are holding Aunt May also, what will the shock do to her? She's just a frail old woman. I've got to do something." "But what?" J. Jonas Jameson calls the Fantastic Four to inquire about Spider-Man. Mr. Fantastic informs him we saw Spider-Man on a flagpole, but since then we have not seen him. Concerned, J. Jonah Jameson takes advice and calls the Avengers. Mr. Fantastic Reed Richards contacts the Avengers, but Captain America responds saying, "I have never met Spider-Man before." Human Torch writes a message for Spider-Man, but Professor X advises the X-Men to ignore it, saying that it does not concern them and they should continue with their training program. Meanwhile, as the others seek him all over town, the real Spider-Man, in the person of Peter Parker, engages in some bitter soul searching at home. Peter reflects, "Having lost my spider powers, I wouldn't stand a chance against any of my old foes, let alone 6 of them. But I can't sit back and do nothing now. With Betty and Aunt May in the hands of the most dangerous enemies, I've got to show myself for their sake." Bravely, Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, decides to confront the Sinister Six without his superpowers. Later in the building 4 of the Stark Electrical Building, a custom figure slowly and nervously mounts a catwalk. Electro greets him, saying, "Welcome, Spider-Man, so we meet again." The battle begins between Electro and Spider-Man. Electro declares, "This card I'm holding tells you where to go as the next step on your trail to rescue Betty Brant, but you'll have to defeat me to get it." With that, Electro throws an electrical zap towards Spider-Man. Swiftly, Spider-Man dodges the electrical bolt. A split second later, a startling realization dawns upon the amazing teenager. He thinks to himself, "I'm still still alive. I dodged his bolt, but nobody without superpowers can do that. That can only mean one thing. My powers have returned to me. I haven't lost them. I am still Spider-Man. Spider-Man's powers have returned just in the right time as he dodges the electrical bolts. Spider-Man retorts, "You're fast, Mr. Electro, but not fast enough for Spider-Man." Spider-Man throws a huge piece of machinery at Electro, but Electro counters by using one of his electrical bolts to split the machinery in half. With a smirk, Electro explains, "And in places like this, I can recharge myself, increasing my power with each passing second as he absorbs more electricity from the electrical poles." Spider-Man thinks to himself, boy, he's not kidding. It's like fighting a giant living dynamo, but I shouldn't worry since I got my spider powers back. Nothing can scare me. At least I know I've got a fighting chance, and that's all I've ever asked for. I've got to hide from him for a second while I try something as Electro is absorbing more electricity and throwing higher degrees of electrical bolt. Spider-Man thinks to himself, there, that does it. By grounding myself properly, even if he connects with one of his electrical bolts, the force should go harmlessly through me. Now, by catching that main power, switch my web, one tug shuts off all the currents in this plan, thereby weakening Electro. It is Spider-Man officially battling Electro, but it is Peter Parker's smarts that are helping him in this battle as well. Electro says, I see you up there, Spider-Man. Now you've really trapped yourself. Spider-Man responds, that's what they all say before I lower the boom. Electro argues, but this time it's true. I've been saving my strongest bolt for you, and here it is. Spider-Man thinks, good thing I grounded myself, and I'll be able to take the full effect of it thanks to the addition of my spider strength. And now, you high voltage heel, I'll give you something to talk about when you wake up back in the cell. You can tell all the other cons how it feels to be the one receiving the end of a knockout punch by your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Pleasant dreams, sweetie. Just wait here for the police like a good kid while I relieve you of this little card. Uh-oh, I better get going now. I hear someone coming, but who can it be? It's a funny sound like iron clanging along. Iron Man, I should have guessed. You're Mr. Stark's bodyguard, aren't you? That's right, Spider-Man. What was all that ruckus I heard? What's going on here? Spider-Man explains him everything as he jumps off to the next meeting point. In the second location, Spider-Man crosses the bay from the World's Fair. As he done, he runs into a savage leopard behind him and another in front of him. In the next battle to rescue Betty Brant and Aunt May, Spider-Man faces Kraven the Hunter. Kraven declares, so Spider-Man, we meet again, and this time the hunter shall get his prey. With the aid of my little pets. Surrounded by two leopards and Kraven, Spider-Man's senses tingle as the leopards pounce. With every nerve tingling, every sense honed to the razor-sharp edge, the most amazing human fighting machine the world has ever known goes into action with dazzling speed and surging power. Missed me, all three of you. That does it, Kraven. You had your chance with Spider-Man there. There aren't any second tries. Spider-Man uses his webbing to tame the leopard, showcasing his agility and control. Meanwhile, Kraven thinks to himself that Spider-Man is so fast, fighting like a savage and resembling a whirlwind unleashed. Despite being adversaries, Kraven holds much respect for Spider-Man. Spider-Man declares, you can't leave yet, Gunga Din. You still have something of mine. Kraven warns, don't press your luck, Spider-Man, if I ever get my hands on you. Swiftly, Spider-Man grabs a card containing his next destination from the belt of Kraven. Spider-Man runs off, skillfully evading the leopards that chase him. Although Spider-Man has managed to obtain the card, he hasn't single-handedly defeated the Kraven the Hunter. As Spider-Man leaves, he quips, see you around, Kraven. By the way, if you get a few minutes to kill, why don't you see a good barber? Spider-Man feels that he has regained all his superpower, realizing the loss was psychosomatic, brought on by a deep-rooted feeling of guilt due to Uncle Ben's death. After successfully fighting two members of the Sinister Six, suddenly a flame appears below Spider-Man's feet. Swiftly jumping out of the way, he seizes the Human Torch. The Human Torch wants to tell Spider-Man something, but Spider-Man is in a rush and jokingly says, I haven't got time to give out autographs today. Now get lost. The Human Torch responds, boy, sometimes I really wish you turned bad so I could just let you have it without pulling any punches. Anyway, this little flame basket ought to hold you. Spider-Man retorts, are you kidding me? No human matchstick can put the kibosh on me. The Human Torch is trying to contain Spider-Man, but can't, jokingly says, you're harder to see than the president. Finally, the two superheroes catch up and the Human Torch offers Spider-Man his help. I'll admit, you're not the person I like most to be stuck on a desert isle with, but seeing as how we're both sort of on the same line of work, I figure maybe I could lend a hand. Oh, is that it? Well, I'm sorry I blew up the way I did, Torch, but this fight of mine is pretty personal, so I'll handle it alone. Okay, guy, if that's how you want it. Meanwhile, the man who has engineered the whole complicated plan of revenge against Spider-Man watched the results so far with keen interest and mounting disappointment. So Spider-Man got past his second obstacle. Also, well, have to be even more careful from now on. Sorry I've been such a poor host neglecting you charming ladies this way, but I had some very urgent matters to attend to, and now I hope you'll like this Danish pastry with your coffee. Such a charming gentleman. It's a pleasure to meet someone with such good manners nowadays. At that very moment, in another part of town, Spider-Man receives a rude shock as he sees the X-Men waiting for him. Spider-Man says, "Hold it, you guys. Wait, it's a mistake. I must have come to the wrong address. Look out," Spider-Man is thinking. I don't get it. Cyclops blasting my web without giving me a chance to explain. And then the second startling shock, Spider-Man is taken aback thinking, holy smoke, they're not the real X-Men at all. They're just a bunch of highly developed robots. With a smile, Spider-Man smashes the beast and follows up with a punch to the Angel, watching as all the mechanical parts come apart. As the fake Cyclops robot shoots lasers from his eyes, Spider-Man quickly webs up his legs and forcefully slams his head to the ground. And then the amazing teenager Spider's senses tells him that one of the metal walls isn't metal at all. He thinks to himself, whoever my real enemy is behind the camouflage wall. I better attack him before he could try something else. Spider-Man spots Mysterio and says, of course, only you have the technical know-how to design such deadly, deceptive mechanical devices. Mysterio thinks Spider-Man is very lucky. Luck you call it? Mister, you don't know the half of it. I'm the original hard luck kid, but that won't stop me from playing a drum solo on the glass fishbowl of yours unless you give me that card with my fourth destination on it. A fist fight ensues between Mysterio and Spider-Man. Spider-Man only wants the card as Mysterio throws a punch. The card falls out of Spider-Man's hand. Mysterio then unleashes a smoke screen, but using Spider-Man's spider sense, it enables him to find an enemy that cannot be seen. As Spider-Man slugs away at Mysterio inside the mist, he sees the card has fallen on one of Cyclops' power beams. Again, Spider-Man is the hero, but Peter Parker, intellect, knows that if he grabs the card, it will fall into ashes. Spider-Man says, only one chance, I'll be using my webbing, covering it to put out the flames. Now when I peel away the printed paper, the imprint of the writing may somehow be transferred onto the webbing. I've got to concentrate harder than ever before. It's up to my spider senses to detect the messages that was written here before the last trace of it fades away. But now our scene changes once again as Spider-Man, having analyzed the message on his last card, reaches his next destination. Spider-Man thinks to himself, it's nothing more than a walled-in courtyard. I wonder what ex-enemy is waiting to attack me here. That's strange. There's a note telling me where to go next and no one to stop me from reading it. Oh well, whoever it is, maybe he got cold feet. But then suddenly a shape takes form right before his startled eyes. Spider-Man says, I guess I should have guessed it was you. The man responds, I've waited a long time for this moment, and now for alas, it's here. So you want the card? Come and get it. All you have to do is get past me. It is the Sandman. You're helping me to beat you because you're such a show-off, Sandman. If you had remained in your sandy form, I wouldn't have been able to wallop you with all my spider strength like this. But no, you had to take form in front of my eyes to make a dramatic appearance. Okay, so you impressed me. When Spider-Man grabbed the card, iron panels raised to close in around Sandman and Spider-Man, confining them within an iron cell. The Sandman, throwing sand punches, says, I purposely allowed you to get the note to let you think you won. Now, no matter how you try to dodge my blows, it's only a matter of time before I connect with you. You can't keep ducking forever. The Sandman throws many blows, one after another, attempting to hit Spider-Man. But then, surprisingly, Sandman begins to slump forward, weakening as though on the verge of collapse. Sandman says, what's happening to me? I can't breathe. I need air. Another trick. Sandman had made the iron cell airtight, and he needed a normal amount of air. However, Spider-Man's spider strength allows him to hold his breath longer, and now it's very easy for him to pry the door open, leaving Sandman defeated. Well, back at the headquarters of a thoughtful Doctor Octopus, I never thought Spider-Man would do so well. Only Vulture remains to oppose him. I better make some new plans in case he reaches here. I'm so sorry that you've become involved in all this, Mrs. Parker. Oh, that's all right, dear. I just hope that Peter isn't too worried about me. The dear boy is so nervous and high high-strung. At that moment, Aunt May's nervous, high-strung nephew is meeting his former flying foe face to face again, the Vulture. The Vulture says, I am the lesson on your list, Spider-Man, because I am the most dangerous of all. Only I can tell you where to find Betty Brant, but if you want a chance to fight me, you must do it my way. Each time we fought in the past, you defeated me with your cursed web shooters. If you want another chance, you must remove your webbing device, or else I'll simply fly off. Spider-Man knows he will be at a severe disadvantage taking off the web shooters, as in previous times they saved his life in fighting the Vulture. The Vulture then sprays oil on the floor where Spider-Man is standing. Then, by beating his wings and circling around, the Vulture causes enough air pressure for Spider-Man to slip off the building without his web shooters. Spider-Man this time uses his sticking ability to adhere to a building. However, the Vulture quickly reacts and lassos Spider-Man's leg. This does not look good for Spider-Man. The Vulture says, you don't think I let you remain stuck to the side of the building, did you? Spider-Man thinks, I've got to hurl myself as close to me as possible before he could pry me loose. Now, while he least expects it, Spider-Man thinks to himself, here goes. Now I'll hold a rope with one hand and free my leg with the other. At times like this, my old spider speed sure comes in handy. The Vulture still isn't sure what I'm up to. Now to lasso his leg before he lets go of the rope. Spider-Man did it. He lassoed the leg of the Vulture and then swung himself up to get the high ground on his flying opponent. Spider-Man makes a joke. If the Spider-Man business ever gets slow, I'll try a job for acting in TV westerns. And now, you wing-flapping weasel, I'm going to clip your wings and pin your feathers for you, unless you tell me where to find Betty Brant, and I mean right now, here. Sure, I'll tell you. You'll never be able to leave the place alive anyway. And if you do, well, meet again, Spider-Man. I'll see to that. That's okay with me, Flyboy. You know your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is always available for weddings, bar mitzvahs, and you all sports of fun things. Now fly me back to where I left my webbing. Giddy up. Exactly 6 seconds later. Now you just stay there all nice and snug while Spidey goes bye-bye. If you get lonely, just wave to the nice people below. In a surprising event, a captive Aunt May thanks Dr. Octopus, noting he is very charming, has manners, and is well-spoken. Betty Brant is shocked. Just a few 100 yards away, Spider-Man reaches his final destination, an old castle. He makes sure that his web fluid capsules are all filled up before the battle. Of course, Spider-Man does not go through the front door. Instead, he climbs up one of the towers of the castle and uses his spider sense to track down Betty and Aunt May. Finally, Spider-Man sees Dr. Octopus, but he does not have his mechanical arms. Spider-Man believes this is the best chance to defeat Doc Ock, but Doc is expecting him. Spider-Man is more concerned with where Betty Brant and Miss Parker are, but Dr. Octopus has a plan. The plan is his mechanical arms are slowly creeping towards Spider-Man. Spider-Man's spider sense is warning him of danger, but it was too late. Dr. Octopus says, huh, you didn't suspect I can control my arms mentally, did you? Now I've got you, meddlesome juvenile. The fight starts as Dr. Octopus with his mechanical arms ties up Spider-Man's arms while he punches him. Spider-Man frees one of his arms and hits Dr. Octopus right in the face, saying, tell me something, Doc. Are you trying to defeat me by talking me to death? The punch from Spider-Man definitely phased Dr. Octopus, but the mechanical arms continues to fight Spider-Man as Dr. Octopus recoups from the punch. Spider-Man is initially chased by Doc's mechanical arms, but when he gets far away, the mechanical arms return to Dr. Octopus. In a nearby chamber, the awesome Dr. Octopus attaches his incredible artificial appendage and then says, why should I knock myself out when I can trace his movements this way and wait until he's in the most vulnerable position? Spider-Man thinks to himself, this place has more twists and turns than a corkscrew. My spider sense is tingling, but I don't see anything wrong yet. Suddenly, a trapdoor opens beneath Spider-Man, feeding a powerful blast of air from the ceiling. Before he can leap to safety, Spider-Man falls into a pool of water. Dr. Octopus says, and now, you insufferable nuance, I'm going to defeat you in a manner most benefiting my name. I shall join you in the giant fishbowl and attack you just as a real octopus would. If you've any last words to utter, Spider-Man, say them now. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot you cannot hear me, though. My air mask, what a pity. I neglect to furnish one for you. I've been in tight spots before, but something tells me they're going to seem like picnics compared to the jam I'm in now. Spider-Man is fending off Doctor Octopus' mechanical arms, but knows he needs to get air, sometimes more than Doctor Octopus, who has an air tank on his back. Spider-Man thinks to himself, just what I feared. He grabbed my foot when I went to the surface. He's starting to pull me down. Now I can hold my breath longer than any other human being, but not forever. Let's chance. I'll release all my webbing at once. It's working. The webbing is tying up the mechanical arms as they are entangled like seaweed. They have trouble controlling themselves and they let go of Spider-Man's leg. Spider-Man keeps close to the edge of the pool to avoid the webbing. This way, the mechanical arms will have more struggles to untangle themselves. Finally, stop struggling, you nincompoop. I'll untangle you enough so the police will recognize you when they get here. You and my other little sparring partners ought to be real proud of yourselves. You practically handed my victories on a silver platter. If you each hadn't been so anxious to get the credit for beating me alone and teamed up against me, you might have had a chance. And now, sooner or later, my spider sense will lead me to Betty and Aunt May, and I feel tingling already. Spider-Man found Betty Brant and Aunt May. Betty Brant is very grateful for Spider-Man rescuing them, but Aunt May thinks Spider-Man is a scary and looks like a villain. She believes Spider-Man is not as well-mannered as Doctor Octopus. She thought that Doctor Octopus would have knocked while Spider-Man just slammed the door. The police are on their way, and Aunt May is confused as she does not know why. She felt safe with Doctor Octopus and wants to say goodbye to the good doctor. Betty Brant thinks, I'd love to know who Spider-Man really is, but beneath that disguise, he could be anybody. His mask muffled his voice, so it's almost unrecognizable. Spider-Man thinks to himself, I've got to get home before Aunt May meets her at the door so she never suspects anything. Peter Parker tells Aunt May he was worried, and Betty Brant tells her everything is fine. Aunt May says, of course I'm all right, dear. I had a very nice visit with the most interesting man. Peter's concerned for his aunt, but Aunt May is more concerned about Peter using slang words. Betty Brant says, your aunt is a very unusual woman. Aunt May was more worried about Peter being alone in the house. Peter says, gosh, May, I kept telling you that when I was 5 years old. Betty Brant knows that Mr. Jameson is probably wondering where Betty Brant is. Aunt May is again concerned about the slang Peter uses, but Peter thinks to himself, sorry, Aunt May, I'll try to be more careful. I wonder how many other guys with superpowers get scolded by their aunt if they don't toe the mark. Aunt May says, I also want you to be cheerful, happy again. I went to Miss Brand to find why you were not happy. Peter Parker now realizes he must be chipper and happy around his aunt. Peter concluded, since we're all together, everything's okay, let's have those cookies. Aunt May, and then I'll take Betty back to her office. Everyone is happy that Peter is happy again. But before we draw the final curtain on our last spark of this last saga, let's take one last look at J. Jonah Jameson, who has known happier days. The Human Torch passes by to see J. Jonah Jameson in only the way the Human Torch could, telling him about Spider-Man. Mr. Jameson, I want to congratulate him for beating the Sinister Six. J. Jameson answers, get out of here, you costume freak. You should be outlawed. Ever since Spider-Man entered my life, even my ulcers have ulcers. If J. Jonah Jameson wants to find some people who agree with him, he'll need to look no further than the city jail. There, he'll find the Sinister Six. Dr. Octopus is determined to beat Spider-Man again, while Electro refuses to be part of the Sinister Six again, and Sandman can't believe he was beaten once more. Spider-Man looks on as the Sinister Six is in jail. Notes: the narrative of this story recounts the origins of Doctor Octopus as seen in Amazing Spider-Man #3. As the Sinister Six gather, the members point out how they previously defeated by Spider-Man. These events happened in Amazing Spider-Man 4, Sandman, Amazing Spider-Man 9, Electro, Amazing Spider-Man 13, Mysterio, and Amazing Spider-Man 15, Kraven. Typically, people cannot see Doctor Strange in his astral form. However, the reason why Flash Thompson and his fellow bullies can see Strange is due to a past encounter in Untold Tales of Spider-Man, Strange Encounters #1. This allowed them to temporarily see Strange's spirit form. Spider-Man recounts how his Uncle Ben was murdered. That happened in Amazing Fantasy #15. The Vulture states that Spider-Man had defeated him twice. This is not entirely accurate. Not only was he defeated in Amazing Spider-Man 2 and 7, he was also defeated by Spider-Man in Untold Tales, Spider-Man 5 and 12, which was 4 times. This error could be attributed to the fact that Untold Tales was published decades after this story. One could assume that the Vulture underplayed how many times Spider-Man defeated him in the past. The reason the Sinister Six kidnapped Betty Brant is because Dr. Octopus has determined that there is some connection between her and Spider-Man, as he first discovered back in Amazing Spider-Man 11 and 12. The Human Torch uses his powers to write a message to Spider-Man in the sky, a routine he started in Strange Tales Annual 2 whenever he sought out the wall crawler. Spider-Man refers to Iron Man as Tony Stark's bodyguard. At the time of the story, Spider-Man and the world at large did not know Iron Man and Stark were the same individuals. This fact is not revealed until Iron Man Volume 3, number 55. All references to 1964 New York World's Fair as being a recent event construct should be considered a topical reference by sliding timescale of Earth 616. Likewise, should Aunt May's complaints about missing the Beverly Hillbillies. Next issue, Amazing Spider-Man, Volume 1, Issue 17, The Return of the Green Goblin.